Hi, CJ. How are you? Hi, everybody else. Apologies for not sending the link out. My mistake, but I sent it out in the meeting, so you should be okay. I'm expecting we're going to get a lot of stragglers because there was a lot of people signed up for this meeting, but we'll get going anyway because it's 7 past. Let me get this started. Okay, so there we go. So that's our chatbots. So basically what I'm going to talk about is I've noticed that there's a bunch of websites out there that are doing chatbots using OpenAI or one of the other LLMs. And I basically thought it'd be a good idea to just show people how to do it on their own. There is a thing called fine tuning, which is part of OpenAI, and it lends itself really nicely to this. So really, essentially, that's what we're going to go through tonight. The agenda is a bit of news, what's going on lately with the group, and then custom chatbots. Well, that's basically going to be the vast majority of what we do. So I'll talk about how you do it, and then there'll be like 2 demos. The first demo will be how do you do it, getting it into OpenAI, and the second demo is just a simple web app using Flask that will be a web chatbot so that you can call it from the web. So where are we? So we're up to 140 members, and this is just the second month, which is great. One of the things that I'd like to do each month is I'd really like to use what we did in the previous month as a, just to get going, to, use it in the real world. So for example, if I do this now. So since the last time that we met, about a month ago, we did this thing for a choose your own adventure, and I have the resources at the bottom. So basically what it is we're using ChatGPT and DALL-E to choose our own adventure. So DALL-E, okay, I'm blocked from playing the game. Okay, I've been using it too many times. Hold on. Let me just admit somebody. It's probably blocking me by IP address, so it won't let me in. Okay. Anyway, so if you want to play that, the URL is www.fateforge.ai. So that's a good way of showing what's going on. So there's a couple of things that I've kind of done with it. So first of all, I've limited to 5 uses because I don't want everybody to use it. We have got a paid option, but the paid option isn't live yet. It's going to be live tomorrow. I just have to convert the Stripe account. I'm a big believer in move as fast as you can when it comes to this stuff. Break what you can. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but in the end, you get where you need to get to. So just as if you want to do something similar with whatever you're trying to do with your ChatGPT OpenAI applications, cost me $199 for 2 years for the .ai top level domain. You could probably get it cheaper if you're going to do a .com. I did the basic design in Figma, had somebody help me because I'm not a designer. But once I have the design in Figma, you can generate the HTML and CSS code with a plugin for Figma called AutoGen, which just basically gives you the CSS, the HTML. You have to change a couple of things. And then I'm more of an AWS and Amazon person than Azure, so I have no idea how to upload it to Azure. But I found a book that has a bunch of little apps, something that I've used in the past. And what I did was I just followed all the things that were in the book about how to upload to Azure. It took about 20 minutes. And then I had some fun and games trying to get the domain name to show up. And then connecting a Stripe account. There's also a demo in there about how to do that. And that book is called, let me see if I can find it. It's this book. Where are we? Building AI applications with ChatGPT's APIs. So it's okay. It's pretty old now because it's I think it's kind of 2022, and a lot of what happened in 2022, 2023 is that OpenAI changed all the APIs. So a lot of the code that's in there doesn't work, but fair play to Martin Yanov, who did this book, he did a really good job of updating the code on GitHub, so you can find the code. And I could see every week he was going through changing each of the different applications. But this is a great book, and if you want to get started on this stuff on your own. Plus, it also has, like I said, it has some of the really great things that I haven't seen in other books, practical examples of how to get Azure up and running with your OpenAI app, and then also the Stripe account. It's really straightforward and to follow his example. So we took what we were trying to do from what we were doing from last month with our Choose Our Own Adventure, and then basically put that up into our Fate Forge. So then this month, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to put it on my company account, which is Reese.com. And I'm going to have a whole bunch of custom questions that I would expect people to answer, and just so kind of like we're eating our own dog food each month to create something based on what we did before. So it's all a giant learning experience. The productivity that you get from doing all this stuff in ChatGPT is just monumental. So for as long as I can get there, I'm going to try do each of the different apps each month and see what I learn along the way. So this is the current design. I'm not 100% sold on the design, but I think it's a good way of, you get your two routes. You can go Castle or Alien Portal. Because it's ChatGPT and DALL-E, it never ends, which I think is great. If you want to learn more about this and the resources I have, because I know there's a lot of new people on the talk today, I have the link to the recording of what we did last month, plus the slides. So it should be pretty straightforward to get there. So why are we doing custom chatbots? So the main reason I'm doing custom chatbots is I see a lot of these apps, these websites out here, which are selling custom chatbots using ChatGPT for your website. They do it in a kind of a different way. So there's Chatbase and Chatbot, and I'm sure there's hundreds and hundreds of these out there. I think this, along with creating your own avatar, are two of the biggest growing applications that people are trying to sell so far. I don't think that's going to last. I think it's going to go more in the agent way, the agentic applications. But for the moment, this seems to be what's out there. So I was thinking, there's got to be a better way than scraping your website and using that to find the answers. So our approach is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to use a training file with questions and answers that we want our chatbot to use. And then we input that into OpenAI to create a new fine-tuned model with our X-ray info. So why are we doing that? Well, you've probably heard all the press that says that that there's a lot of hallucinations in ChatGPT. So what you're basically doing is you're priming ChatGPT to essentially just use the information that you gave it. You can also write the queries to the prompts that tells it, don't use anything else other than the fine-tuned data that I gave you, which means that you're kind of securing to a certain degree what you're doing to make sure that the chatbot that's up on a corporate website, doesn't start spewing anything racist, homophobic, or whatever. So which would obviously not be a good thing. But I think that it's a good way for us to start looking at how would we create our own chatbot. So basically what we do is we have a whole bunch of questions that we're going to feed into ChatGPT. It has this process called fine tuning where we can upload our questions and answers. We use that, and it kind of does well, it doesn't kind of do. It does a new model, which is the old ChatGPT model. I'm just going to use 3.5 plus the additional questions and answers, and that becomes a brand new model that you can reference in your chatbot. So essentially, that's what we're trying to do today. So we're going to talk about the base. Here's what we're going to do to walk through this custom chatbot. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about the basics of fine tuning, what it is. I just give you a quick overview. We need data prep. So we have to come up with the minimum of 15 questions, but you probably want a couple of hundred to do this properly. And we put that in a JSON file. And then for OpenAI, it actually wants a line of each of the JSON elements. So we have to convert that into a JSON L file, what it calls. So then once we have that, we can upload that file into OpenAI. We get a file ID. And then with that file ID, we can start a fine-tuning training model. And then that gives us a job ID. And once that job ID is finished, then we can use that to ask it questions based on our questions and answers. So for example, So the example that I'm going to use is if you think about all the times that you call Comcast. Actually, I just had to do it yesterday because my internet went down. I'm using Metronet, and I have to go back to the office because my router failed. So what do they always say when you say I don't have any internet? The first thing they say to you is turn your router off for a minute, and then turn it back on and see if the internet comes back up. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to have a whole bunch of those questions, and we're going to put them in our JSON file. Actually, there's a typo there. And we're going to have a JSON-L file, which is the line version, upload that into OpenAI. And then OpenAI will use that. We'll ask it to train a new model using our JSON file. And then we can ask it questions like, my internet's down, what do I do? And it's going to tell us things like, you should reboot your router. We're going to have a quick demo using that model. And then I'm going to show you the world's simplest website that would actually call that. I did this last month too as well. I really like Flask. It's a really very, very simple app that you can use a way to get up and running. You don't need a lot of web server experience. You don't need to be a Node programmer. If you've got any Python, you can get it to work. In fact, I actually asked ChatGPT to do the Flask coding for me. By and large, it got me 90%. I will say that there's a very ironic thing that happens when you ask ChatGPT to generate code. It's actually really bad at generating the Python code for calling OpenAI. The reason for that is it was trained on the model. I think the training stopped November 22 or November 23, and it was trained on the old model. So if you ask ChatGPT to generate code for you, it's actually going to be the out-of-date code. So you have to change that to as well to the new API, which we talked about a little bit last month. But it's if you're expecting ChatGPT to give you the code and to work automatically, unfortunately, irony of ironies, it doesn't work. You have to change it to the new API, and then you can get it working and get it into Flask. And then I'm going to show a demo running the ChatBot. All right. If anybody's got any questions, just fire ahead. So essentially, this is what we're doing. Normally, what you do with GPT is you give it a prompt, and then it completes the prompt for you. It gives you the answer. GPT, what does it do? It just is really good at guessing the next token. It's trained on the internet, it's trained on YouTube, it's trained on a bunch of different things, and it will give you its best possible answer that it thinks that you want for whatever prompt that you provided it for. So what do we want to do is, well, we have a specific domain of information that we want to talk to the customer about, or talk to whoever we want to talk about. So we want it to use our list of questions and answers. We don't necessarily want it to use whatever the completion is here. So for example, we do a lot of drone work. So I wouldn't want ChatGPT to be talking about how to implement some DJI code, because I think I'd be better at doing that because we've got a lot more experience. I suspect it's not trained on the SDKs that I need to get trained on. So I don't want it to, I want to have information on my own specific domain that I would use to be able to answer questions when somebody comes to my website and wants to use my chatbot. So that's the process of fine tuning. So then when somebody prompts, they will get a mixture of these questions that you put into it, our JSON-L file, plus the GPT model as well. And then it'll give you an answer for what you're trying to do. Hopefully the right answer. And because you've prompted it, excuse the pun, with a lot of the information, you've seeded it with a lot of the information that you wanted to use, it's less likely to have hallucinations. It's much more likely to give an appropriate answer. And you can also constrain it further by using better prompts to say only use the questions and answers and don't use the original data that you've been trained on. So what do we do? So we can do everything that I'm talking about tonight. You can do manually, but because this is kind of a programming class, workshop, meetup, I always want to do everything in Python or in Java or whatever else language we want to use. So because it's ChatGPT and OpenAI, that's going to be Python. But it is worth knowing that you can do this. You can do this manually. So if you go to the playground, so the OpenAI playground, you go to fine tuning. You say create a fine tuning job. First of all, you have to upload a file. So you upload a file. You create a fine tuning job, and it's going to give you a new model that you can then use. So instead of you saying use the model ChatGPT 3.5, it's going to use a new model ChatGPT X and then a GUID afterwards, which is the combination of the ChatGPT plus your questions and answers. So this is an example of a JSON file that's got a single question and answer on each line. So for example, how do I date my billing information? So date your billing information, log into your account, go to the billing section and follow the prompts. So obviously there's no way that ChatGPT would know that. So this is how we get the information into this. So they're in all the original code and all the information that I got on how to use this either came from the OpenAI documentation, which I have a link in the resources, plus there was also some code that I found from a GitHub repo that I thought was really good about fine-tuning it, fine-tuning the ChatGPT. So if you want to check that out, that's pretty good too as well. So a lot of what I have is generated from ChatGPT and also taken from GitHub. So what do we do for our data prep? So this doesn't hit anything, so it's not going to cost you any money at this stage. So we have an input file, which is called input-data.json. We have an input.jsonl file, which is the line version. And all that we do is we basically take out the new lines and put everything into a single file. So you have to run create.json.py, and all of the code in tonight's talk is up on GitHub. Again, it's in the resources. If you want to follow along, it's github.com/GodfreyNolan, which is my name, /chatbot. So it's all up there if you want to take a look at it. So this is just the first file that we have to do. So we have to make sure that our input.data.json is in the folder. The one that I'm using, I literally just asked ChatGPT in the online interface to say, give me 50 questions and answers that a typical ISP would have to contend with. So then we run this. Now we get it in this format. So instead of it being in a classic JSON format, it's in a format that OpenAI just prefers. So the file needs a minimum of 15 questions, but like I said, ideally you're going to need hundreds of questions and answers to match every type of question you could be asked in your chatbot. It's also another little thing that I want to do in the chatbot, but I haven't quite done it yet, which is I want there to be a call to action. So there needs to be some call to action where the person can enter their email address or click here to go to the contact form, that kind of thing. So I haven't quite got to that yet, but I will certainly share the code when I finish that off next month for next month's talk. Okay, so then I showed you the playground interface that we can do everything manually. But what we want to do is we want to actually upload the file. So the call that we make, there's a couple of things that's going on. And I know there's some new people on the call. So on the meetup, so I'm going to say a few of the things. So the first thing we need to do, this is a Python file. So we're going to say from OpenAI, we've installed the OpenAI library. The way we do that is we do pip install OpenAI. We're importing the OpenAI code here. And then we're saying client equals OpenAI. And then there's another thing that you have to do here, which I'll show you in the code, which is you have to put your API key in there. So everything that you need to do once you talk to the playground from Python, you have to have an API key. So if I go back to that real quick, if you see over here, there's API keys. You have to click on API keys, create an API key, and once you create the API key, then you put it into a secure file, which I'm using a thing called config. So I have a config.py. I import another library called config, and that way I have access to my secret API key that I've just created in the playground, and then I can do this sort of stuff. So the first thing that we do is we have our new data prepped file, which is the JSON-L file. And then we call this client files create, which is this OpenAI. So OpenAI.files.create. And we're sending it up this file. And then the purpose that we're trying to do is we're trying to do fine tuning so it knows where to put it. And then once that's done, it will give you a file ID for the file that you've uploaded. So here's one I did earlier. And it gave me this file ID, which is this kind of GUID thing, is at the bottom here. And then if we go back into the playground, we can see that if we look under files, I think this is storage now. Things change so often, so quickly. But you can see a bunch of different files, and you can see this one. I did this a long time ago, this last February. But there's I did it again recently, but it basically just tells you, here's the file, here's the size that was there, here's the data that's created. But you know it's uploaded, so then that's great. Then you can use that to start training your model. So if we want to train the model, we do the same thing again. We import the different libraries that we want to use. We set up our API key here. We want to reference our file ID, which is the file ID that was just created. And then we want to create a fine-tuning job. So now we're saying, using the training file ID, we want a fine-tuning job, which is we want to create another model, and we're going to use GPT 3.5 Turbo. So why am I using GPT 3.5 Turbo? Well, you can't really fine-tune GPT-4. That's probably going to change. And I have heard that you can fine-tune with GPT-4 Omni, which is the new one that came out recently. But that's kind of a closed beta so far. But I'm sure over the next days or weeks, that will probably open up to everybody. But certainly for what you're trying to do with a chatbot, GPT 3.5 Turbo is more than adequate for what we're trying to do. So, okay, so what have we done so far? We have a file, and now we've created this fine-tuning job. And the fine-tuning job, we want to get what the fine-tuning job ID is, because we're going to need it at a later stage. And then we want to capture the events for whatever's happening with our fine-tuning so that we know what's going on, and we want to print the events. Okay, so this is, we have our fine-tuning job. We haven't actually started the job yet. We've just got the job. So the next stage is actually going to take an awful lot of time, but for the moment, we have our file, and now we have our fine-tuning job. So what has it given us in the events? So it's basically telling us that we have this, it's validating the training file, which is the file that we uploaded, which is this one here, and then it gives us this fine-tuning job. So this is the thing that we need. We need this FT job and this GUID afterwards to continue with our work. We go look in the playground again, we can see that this is working. So now it's fine-tuning. So finally it started fine-tuning. And this is going to take some time. So it was quite surprising when I did this the first time. But this is basically a lunchtime effort. So if you're going to do it, I would recommend it's going to take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour based on the number of questions that you give it. It's not something that's going to happen instantaneous. I don't know what's going on in the background. They do give us some kind of information about what's happening. So, it gives us some information on what the training loss is. Fine-tuning job started, moving job to queued state, validating training file, create fine-tuning job. And then once it's succeeded, it gets to here. So let's see where it started. Oh, it's great. It doesn't actually tell you when it finished. So only when it's created. So it tells you how many tokens it used, how many epochs it took in its training. I don't really worry about this too much. Basically, what I'm after is I want this new GPT 3.5 Turbo -010613, and it's a personal afterwards and whatever this is. So now I have my own personal trained, somebody else is trying to get in. My own personal trained model that I can now use in whatever I want to do. And in this case, what we're trying to do is use it for a chatbot. The goal here is to get to this stage, to make sure that we can get to copy this job ID, which we could then use later. Okay, so if you were following what we were doing last month, you'll know that the way that you call a OpenAI from Python is as follows. So you have, again, you import the library. Again, you set up your API key. In this case, I'm just hard coding question, ask me anything. And then in this case, what I'm doing is I am saying, I'm passing in, this is the new format of OpenAI, which is not the way that the stuff that you get from ChatGPT. So this is I think it's the OpenAI 1.1 or 1.2 spec. So it's client.chat.completions.create. We're passing it in a JSON of messages, JSON object of messages, role is user, content is question. I'm not bothering with any system or assistant messages at this stage. We're just doing something really basic. The model I'm using now is the one that we've just created. So that's the most important thing. And then these things are, temperature is basically how random do you want it? Max tokens is, I don't want to have thousands and thousands of tokens. It costs me tons of money. And then n equals 1, I just want one response, and then I'm going to print what the response is. Another reason why you might want to use ChatGPT is 3.5 is it's a lot cheaper than the current version of ChatGPT 4. I'm thinking that's why 4 Omni is going to be available fairly soon, because that's pretty cheap too from what I've been experiencing. Okay, so then when I run this, I say, ask me anything, and says what security measures are in place to protect my account. And then it says we employ industry standard security measures, including encryption, two-factor authentication, and regular security audits, which is one of the answers that I gave it. Not really worried about the rest of it. Total tokens is used as 52, so that's pretty cheap. Okay, so that came from the original JSON file and is obviously not a typical ChatGPT response. All right, so let's have a little demo first. So we're going to have the JSON file, the JSON-L file. We're going to have our file ID and our job ID. So let me get out of this real quick. So all of the code is up here on github.com, Godfrey Nolan ChatBot. Okay. Let me just start VS Code. Okay, somebody's got a question. Can you share on the chat? Certainly. Okay. All right, so this is my, I can show you what I did first, actually. To start it off, what I basically did was I asked ChatGPT, just ChatGPT 4 only. I'm using the OpenAI and fine-tuning. How can I create my own chatbot and hook into a website? It recommended, it said, here's how you use fine-tuning. Here's the code that you want. This is the old code, so I had to update that. So that's like I said, the ironies. ChatGPT can't code itself. It gave me a very simple HTML file with some JavaScript, which we're actually going to use later in our Flask. And then I went down and kind of prompted it to give me more information. And it gave me 50 detailed messages for ISP contact service agent. It did put a system message in there that I didn't need, but it's pretty easy to strip that out. So things like, how do I check my data usage? You can check your data usage by logging into your account on our website using our mobile app. So I didn't really have to do much work here, and that's the whole point. I don't want to do any work. I'm a lazy coder, so I want to get it to do as much as it possibly can. I am not going to get away with that when I'm trying to do it for my own website. But anyway, so here we have our input data.json. So the first thing that I have to do is I have to get my input data.json out. So if I do, let me make sure I have my create JSON-L file. So that's all set up. Let me get rid of that file. Let's do. Okay, so it's created my file for me. What's the next thing I have to do? The next thing I have to do is to upload the file into the playground. I don't have to worry about anything that was hard coded here. So this should be fairly instantaneous. Fingers crossed. The way my evening's been going with machines crashing and everything else, that's probably not great. Okay, so now I have a file. So if I go to my create fine tuning, what I do is I replace the file with the new file ID. Oh yeah, let's talk about the code a little bit too as well. I'll tell you a little bit about the code. So this is what I was telling you before. So we have from OpenAI, import OpenAI. We do import config. So I have a config file here, which I'm not going to show you because that's got my API key and I don't want to delete it again. And then you say client equals OpenAI, API key equals config. So I have a variable in my config file called OpenAI so that when the job starts, it knows that it can use this API key. It's going to charge me for whatever fine tuning it does. Okay, so let me do this. Like I said, this one's going to take a while, so I'm probably not going to use this. But we can start it anyway, just to make sure that it's working. And it started off. So, and there's my FT job that I want to use. So I'm not going to do that yet because the FT job is going to take a while. I'm going to use one that I did before. So I'm going to use this fine-tuning model. And it's going to ask me anything. So I'll go back to my input data.json. Say, how do I check my data usage? And of course, this is not an exact science. It's not guaranteed to work. It's just, it's more likely to work than if you don't do this. You can find your data usage by logging into the website or mobile app, which is exactly what we had. So in this case, it worked, which is great. Okay, so let's have a look and see what's going on the website. So in here, so this is 7:35. So this was just uploaded. So we just uploaded this input data.jsonl. If I go to fine tuning, you can see that we have one that's already fine tuned, which is the one we did, and then this one that's fine tuning now. So it's working. But like I said, this is go away and make a cup of coffee, cup of tea, maybe have a bite to eat. Come back in whatever 20 minutes and it might be done, depending on how many questions you have. The optimum questions are in the hundreds if you want to do a chatbot that will cover most of the things that you'd expect on a website. Okay, so that's the first part. So then the second part is I want to be able to put this on the website. And I did, like I said, I asked ChatGPT, can you give me some code, please, so I can have some HTML? And then I think I asked it for some backend code. Yeah, here's the backend code too as well. So give me some code to be able to call this. So it gives me the bones of what I need to be able to have a HTML and a HTML website up and running to use with my chatbot, my newly trained chatbot. Okay, so if I go into VS Code, I need to change folders because it's in demo 2. Open folder, demo 2. Okay, so in this place now we have one app.py file. Okay. Actually, I do have an explanation in the code. Let me just, before we do this, let's go back to the presentation. So we're jumping ahead of it. Okay, so we did all this, demo 1, demo 2. What we're trying to do is website integration. If I'm using the OpenAI and fine-tuning, how can I create my own chatbot? You saw that I'll get to my website. So this is what it's going to look like. So we're going to have like a really stupid, simple web app, which says chat with our bot. So we're going to ask it a question and then see what the response is. How do I secure my Wi-Fi? To secure Wi-Fi, make sure you use a strong password, blah, 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 blah. What's the code look like? Okay, so here's my code. So this is the HTML document generated by ChatGPT. This didn't need any changes. So we have a head. Like if you're used to HTML, you'll know, you'll know it has the HTML head, body, and HTML closing off. So within our head, we don't have anything. We've just got our chatbot. Title, in the body section, there's the H1 header that says chat with your bot. There's an input field where the user can type their message. The field has an ID of user input and a placeholder text that says type a message. Thank you very much, ChatGPT. Next, the input field, there's a button that when clicked triggers the send message function. So the send message function is in this JavaScript at the bottom. So the function first retrieves the user's input from the input field. It then sends a post request to the /chat endpoint of the server with the user's message in the request body. And then the fetch function is used to send to the post request because it's a post. This is what we're doing. We're filling in a form, hitting submit. It's doing a post. The headers option is set to indicate that the body response is in a JSON format. The body option is set to the JSON string representation object that contains the user's message. So they get the user's message back. And then the fetch function returns a promise that resolves to the response object. Response is then converted to JSON with the response.json method, which also returns a promise. And so when the promise returns and resolves, it gives the actual data from the response. The data is then used to update the chat box. We can see here. So a user input is updated. And then the data response is basically the given in the HTML, because we're attaching to the get element by ID chat box, which is this ID here. We're giving it the text and just basically giving it back what we got back from ChatGPT. This is the Python code that runs the website. You can see here that we're using the model. What are we doing? So we're importing a whole new bunch of different libraries here. We have Flask, which is what we're using to create the application. So it's a Flask library. It's importing Flask. We have request because we're making HTML request, HTTP request. We're using JSONify because we want to have the JSON responses going backwards and forwards. We're using render template. So render template is used in conjunction with Flask to create a HTML page in the templates folder, which allows us to interact with the template and then do the things that we were just doing, which is passing the script back and forward. So basically what we do are passing the response back and forward. We have, if you know Python, you know that everything starts with app.run. So we start app.run. Its app then goes up to say this is a Flask object. We're setting our API key. All HTML servers have a route of / to start with. So this is the first thing that gets called. So it renders the template index of HTML that we just saw, which basically asks it to just to display it's that enter your message here, and then the button, and then when we click the button, it's going to go to /chat because we told it in the form that when it gets called that it should go to the /chat route. So it's whatever your 127.0.0.1 /chat, and then we get the message from the input box. We pass it into our new fine-tuned model with role of user, and the user input is what we're passing in, which is whatever the question is. And then we return the response.choices message.content, which is the content that comes back from ChatGPT. And that gets passed back to here so that it gets displayed appropriately here, you and bot. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So just to show you where the two files are, we're using Flask. And if you don't know Flask at all, it's really, really simple to get up and running. I recommend going back and looking at the demo that we did last week or last month because I spent a bit more time on it. So we have a template which is called index.html, which is the one I just showed you. We have our app.py, which originally came from the ChatGPT request, but this is the new format for calling ChatGPT from Python. And then you need to have a messages JSON object too as well, but everything else is more or less the same. Let's see if we can run this. So it's telling me that it's here. Follow link. And then how do I secure my Wi-Fi? Oops. Secure your Wi-Fi, use a strong password, enable WPA3. And you can see here that it's done a get, which is this, and then it's done a post, which is this. So everything's working, thankfully. Okay. What else did I miss? Let me just go back to my thing again, my slideshow, in case we got that to work. We got our HTML. What did I have to change? So I had to import config. That wasn't obviously in what came with ChatGPT. I had to add the route for the index.html because for some reason that wasn't in the output I got from ChatGPT. I had to enter the new fine-tune model here. I had to change the messages format, so it's using the newer OpenAI 1.2 format. And I had to change the responses in line 24 because that's changed to the responses come back. But it's basically the same. We have the resources. I'm almost done. So we have, this is the URL to the book that I mentioned, which is really good if you want to use Azure, or if you want to use Stripe, or if you just want to have a bunch of other applications that the person wrote. He uses tkinter a lot, so there's not many websites in there, although that is where I got my first Flask example. I think for every example he has in the book, he's basically using a different type of tool each time, which I think is really great. This is the URL for preparing your data set if you want to learn a bit more about JSON L files. This is where I got all the information about fine-tuning, where I found a lot of the code that I used tonight. This is where all the code is. And then if you want to go back to last month's to try and study up on how to call OpenAI from Python, because I didn't really cover that too much today, how to do all the ChatGPT completions, and also how to do DALL-E calls. That's the way to go. And then this bit.ly file that will take you to the YouTube of the CYOA is Choose Your Own Adventure. So if you want to go have a look at that and recreate what we did with FateForge, do what you like. All the information is there. And then next month, what I'm going to do is do a learn a language app. So I've noticed that a lot of the companies out there a lot of the language companies are charging $50 to have your own personal assistant to do language training. So for me personally, I've been trying to learn French on and off for years since I was in school. So one of the things that I've always found the hardest thing to do is to practice talking French with a native speaker. It's always been something that I found very hard to do. My pronunciation has always been a barrier. I've always found it really difficult to get over that barrier. I can read French pretty well, but when it comes to actually speaking it, I'm not very good. So there are lots of ways to do it, but I think it's really cool because there's a Whisper API that OpenAI has, and that's a text-to-speech API. So what we're going to do next month is we're going to use Whisper to figure out how to take transcriptions from YouTube's, for example, but we're also going to create our own MP3 files with Whisper. Plus, at the end, I always like to do a real demo. So the real demo is going to be a language app. So it'll be choose a language, and then I think it's Gradio is what I'm going to use. That's what I've used before to be able to talk to the website. So we're going to talk to the website and basically have a conversation in French and hopefully learn a language. And of course, it's not just going to be French. It could be Spanish, it could be Russian, it could be any of the languages that the Whisper API supports, it isn't a huge number. It's not like Google. It's in the 10s and 20s, but certainly the major languages are in there. So that's really basically what we're going to do, so that you can get over you basically create a fake person to talk to. We're going to have a bunch of different scenarios in a hotel, in a restaurant, at the train station, that kind of thing. Just have a way of talking to a fake person, so you can get over that embarrassment of talking to a native speaker and them laughing at your pronunciation. See, it's all about the embarrassment. Okay. Stop sharing now. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before I finish up? No, again, sorry for all the confusion about the link earlier on. My fault. I did send it out in email. But... Sure, go. No, I didn't do that here. Well, here's what you would do. Let me see. Okay, so the question was, I didn't do anything about assistance this week. I didn't do anything about system directives. Should we be doing that? and is it going? The second part of the question was, is it going to be enough to be able to restrict the questions? And that's actually a really great question. So what we're doing here is my question, which I'm passing in here as content, is ask me anything. I really should have a system thing in here. Which would say something like, only use the fine-tuning data that you've been trained on. So you really should do something like that to kind of restrict what's going on so it doesn't get you into any trouble. I don't know if that's enough yet, but I will know when we meet up again next month, because this is going to go on the Reese website. And we're going to bash it as hard as we can to make sure that it'll only return what I want it to return, more or less. I don't think there's ever 100% success rate, but rather than, I think the other chatbots that I pointed out earlier on, I'm not confident that screen scraping your website is going to get you the precise list of questions and answers. Certainly not for me. It might work for other people, but it's not going to get me the precise list of questions and answers that I would want to portray on my website for somebody who comes to the website to be able to interact with it on a and be more or less guaranteed that it's not going to say something stupid. So yeah, we'll have a system prompt in here, which is something like this or something a bit harsher. ChatGPT response to the restrictions that you give it, but you really got to nail it down so that it doesn't start going off in weird tangents. And lots of people play with chatbots just to get it to, because they know they're LLM-based chatbots, to get it to get outside of the box. But so to answer your question, Mike, I'll know next month whether this works or not, and we'll put it on the website for everybody to try. Anything else?
Hi, I have a question. So I want to know what's the quality of the training data after, because I think you put 15 examples. So after that, how many questions the ChatGPT can answer? So because they can answer some linked question, because maybe some questions is not very exactly as you have put inside. Yeah.
Well, I would recommend having hundreds of questions and answers. I would not, a minimum is 15, but that's not going to be good for your own chatbot. It's just, you would need hundreds of questions and answers. The other thing that it will do, which I didn't mention, so your question is great, Naomi, thank you very much. So the question is, what about the quality of answers? So the more questions and answers you have, the better the responses are going to be. Remember, it's LLM is a word interpreting engine. So easy for me to say. So even if you ask it something that's not exactly what was in the questions and answers, it's going to choose the most appropriate response based on the questions and answers that you gave it. So if you have something that's pretty close, it's going to go with the close response. Because it'll be able to merge what the person asked with the training data that it has and give the best response based on that. So if you restrict it to say what I'm saying here, only use the fine-tuning data, then it will just choose the most appropriate response that it thinks is the qualified answer for what the human asked in the chatbot. Does that work?
Yeah. So I think that is very like how to say, it's the fixed answer for this question. Yes. So
yes.
So it's possible to make this one to generate flexible answer, because I wanted to train this one to produce the resume to tailor the job. I think it doesn't work yet.
That's a different application. If you wanted to get it to do a resume, that's actually a really good application to do a resume builder to response versus the whatever the job is that you're trying to do. I think we'll use that as a future event for one of the meetups, because I'm always looking for good applications, and I think that's actually a fantastic application. So, but that would you can use it for fine tuning, but what we're doing here is a chatbot, so it's really quite limited. It's a one-line answer. What you're asking it to do is to create a resume based on whatever the LinkedIn job is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different than what we're trying to do here, but I will return to that because I think that's a fabulous application. So maybe in a month or two, when we do a bit more on this, I think next month we're going to do the language one, and then somebody asked me to do RAG, so we're going to do that fairly soon, and then maybe we'll return to this and see if we can do one for a resume to match what the jobs is, because I think that's that's something that is a real application that you could put on the web. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I had one question.
Go, Sandeep.
It was a great presentation, and I love that you share the project with us.
Thank you.
I mean, for this chatbot, it's like question and answer. Does it retain the history? And if I want it to retain the history of our conversation and then answer based on that, is it possible?
Yes. So what Sandeep asked was, is it possible to retain the history of the questions and answers? And I will tell you, we did that. Did we do it here? Yes. Basically, you create a conversations object and you just add the messages to the conversation object so that it retains the context of what's going on. I thought it was in this code, but it's not in this code. But I will post that as part of the I'm going to put the slides up tomorrow and the video up tomorrow, and I will put something in the slides. I'll give you a code in the PowerPoint, a link to some GitHub that I have that would show you how to do that conversation. But yeah, you need really, if you're going to do this professionally, you need to know what the person's asking so that you don't get the same response every time they ask the same question. Because what's the worst possible thing you can do when you're doing an IVO or a chatbot is that the chatbot loses context and you get asked the same questions over and over again. So yeah, it's all you basically do is you just create a conversation object, which would be, let me see for my demo too. So in here, whatever this user input is, we would store this messages in a conversation object and then just store the responses. So that would be role, user, content, user input, and then whatever the response is, we'd store that. And then we would add the next message to that too again, and then add the next message to that again, add the next message to that again, so that when we're passing it into this chat completions.create, it has a history of all the things that have been said before. Because every time you call this chat completions.create, it's an individual action. So if you don't save all the messages that went before, it's only going to react to what you actually give it in this messages JSON object here. So you just basically have to add each time. You have to have a conversation object that you pass in, and then over and over again, it will look at what the trail of conversations that you had and know what to respond to next time.
Got it.
Okay, give it context essentially. Great questions. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're done. Thanks very much. See you all next month.